Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. A lot is going on in the news, isn't it? First of all, some good news. We had two really, really important decisions out of federal court last Friday. One from the D.C. Circuit Court that held Donald Trump does not have absolute immunity against civil suits. And the other, even more important, from Judge Chutkan, who is the judge in Donald Trump's criminal trial set for March 4 on the D.C. charges against him arising from January 6th. She too held that he enjoys no absolute immunity from prosecution because he was president at the time. There's no such thing as a get out of jail card, she said. And boy, is that important, because that was probably his best chance not to avoid entirely prosecution, but to drag this out past next year's election. Not only because she had such a clear, well-reasoned decision, but because the appellate court also has weighed in on this. In all likelihood, he is headed for trial in March of 2024. And that is, as our dear president says, a big effing deal. That means that before voters go to the polls in 2024 November, they may well learn that Donald Trump is a convicted felon. And that, despite all the talk that nobody believes anything, his base will never leave him, Republicans have bought into this, actually will be perhaps determinative in the outcome, because large numbers of voters, believe it or not, still don't want a felon in the White House. Imagine that. We still have some standards. So that is a very, very positive development. Meanwhile, the Gaza Hamas War goes on. And not only does the agony of the Palestinians trapped in Gaza because of Hamas continue, but we are learning more and more, and thank God the media is covering more and more the horrors that went on in Israel and that happened to the hostages while they were in Gaza. For many, many weeks, the UN, human rights groups, much of the media has ignored the sexual violence that took place in Israel on October 7. Gruesome, manipulative, horrible incidents of violence, of really brutality, of torture to women, and repeated rape. It is finally getting some attention that it deserves. I've written about it. There's a magnificent piece in Slate on the issue. The UN on Monday is holding a hearing on the topic, and slowly we're getting more and more detail. It looks as though the evidence is being gathered. There will be prosecutions in Israel, and that's important. The other part of this that I want to talk about a little bit is the hostages themselves. Thank God over 100 of them have been returned. But I have to say, the coverage has been disturbing in some respects. Too many people have said, look, they're in good condition. Oh, thank goodness they haven't been harmed. Oh, good. They're back with their families. Nice pictures. Don't they look great? Well, in fact, particularly if you read the English language media from Israel, you get a very sobering picture. These people, for all intents and purposes, were starved. Children were maimed. We don't know the fate of a number of women who have not been released. God knows what happened to them before or during their captivity. We have, of course, the phenomenon that children were separated from parents, parents separated from other loved ones. We know they were kept in darkness, that children were forced to watch videos of the monstrosities, the atrocities that took place on October 7. There is a word for this, and it is called torture. And this is a war crime. And I fervently hope that people who are so enamored of what they call the uprising, the martyrs, do not look away from the horror that has been perpetrated by Hamas. And we have to be honest. This is not something that many on the left want to talk about. It is not something that many who have adopted the Palestinian cause want to focus on. But it is a basic requirement for truth and for humanity that we recognize who has been harmed, who has been violated, regardless of religion, regardless of nationality. That's the basic definition of human rights, that these principles apply to everyone and protect everyone. And we should share our horror, our empathy with all victims. Switching gears a little bit, we did get rid of George Santos, didn't we? He finally went out the door. And the thing I'll miss most are the Saturday Live parodies of George Santos, which were really absolutely brilliant. But he's gone, thank goodness. And the thing that gets me all excited is that there's going to be one less Republican in Congress, and that seat can very well be filled by a Democrat. And that means the margin for taking back the House is that much smaller. So hooray for some good news, right? And I also want to point out that the economy is still going strong. Despite the gloom and doom, despite the polls, the economy really is very, very strong. So that's a positive note. So not easy times that we are in, I agree. But here and there, I got to say, the press is waking up a little bit. We're seeing more coverage of what a second Donald Trump term would look like. The New York Times is now running a whole series on what that dictatorship would look like. Atlantic Magazine, God bless them, is having an entire edition of their print magazine, which is also available online, devoted to what the horrors of a second Trump term would look like. So slowly, I think we're getting a greater awareness of what awaits us. And I hope that the American people have not tuned out and given up entirely. So that's the world in which we live. Keep the faith, keep hope alive, all those things. And most of all, if you like this sort of commentary, if you like the program, Jen Rubin's Green Room, please tell your friends. They can listen and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever they get their podcasts.